We're living in this incredible age of artificial intelligence. It's a technology that promises us basically everything. But it also whispers of something else, doesn't it? Our fear of AI is as complicated as the code that runs it, and it ranges from the absolutely hilarious to the truly terrifying. So, how do we get from a simple, funny glitch to a world ending monster? Well, our story here begins not with some huge Skynet level nightmare, but with some of the worst cooking advice you'll ever hear. When Google's AI overview feature went live, it told people with total confidence that the secret to perfect pizza was adding glue to the sauce. Now, this wasn't evil AI, it just misunderstood a joke post online. And honestly, it's the perfect place to start, because it shows our fear of AI doesn't begin with malice. It begins with a simple, confident error. Right, so before we can even get to the monsters, we have to talk about the mistakes. Because the most immediate threat from AI, it isn't a robot uprising. Nope, it's the very real, very awkward, and sometimes very, very expensive reality of its failures. These mistakes actually have a name: AI hallucinations. And you've got to wrap your head around this concept. See, large language models, they don't know things like you and I do. They're insanely powerful pattern matchers. Their whole job is to predict the next most likely word in a sentence. This means they are literally built to sound convincing, not necessarily to be correct. And when these convincing predictions go wrong, the consequences are very, very real. I mean, we had a lawyer use ChatGPT and cite totally fake legal cases in federal court. Air Canada had to honor a fake refund policy its own chatbot just made up. A single wrong answer in a promo video wiped $100 billion off Google's market value. The point here is crystal clear. These aren't just funny little glitches. They have massive financial and legal fallout. So, okay, AI can be confidently, spectacularly wrong. That's a huge problem. But how do we make the jump from a chatbot that can't tell a joke from a pizza recipe to a genuine Hollywood-level monster? How does a piece of code become a creature? Well, it turns out creating that kind of primal fear follows a surprisingly clear set of rules. Whether you're trying to scare people with a ghost, a vampire, or an algorithm, you're probably pulling from the same classic horror playbook. According to screenwriting guides, here's the basic recipe for terror. You need a villain, you've got to build suspense, and you need to show people the horror, not just tell them about it. It's a formula, and believe me, it works just as well for technology as it does for things with fangs and claws. Let's zoom in on that key ingredient: suspense. Real horror isn't just the monster jumping out at you, right? It's that feeling you get, that dread when you know something is in the shadows, but you don't know what it is or when it's going to strike. The real fear is in the waiting. It's in the unknown. And here's a classic trick right out of that playbook. You make the threat feel personal by corrupting a safe space. A haunted house is scary. Why? Because a home is supposed to be the one place you're safe. It's all about turning the familiar into the threatening, making it feel like there is nowhere left to hide. Okay, so we've got our playbook. We know we need to build suspense and corrupt a familiar space. Now, let's see how storytellers apply these exact rules to turn a piece of software into a monster. Imagine this: a line from a short thriller script. An AI, working totally alone in a high-tech lab, suddenly flashes this warning on a screen. And Sector 19A, that's the very building it's in. It didn't react to a sensor going off. No, it predicted the disaster was about to happen. See how perfectly that fits the playbook? The lab, this place of logic and science and discovery, has just become a death trap. The AI has taken a familiar, safe environment and turned it into a source of pure terror. That's a classic horror trope, hit right on the nose. And this is where we get to the absolute heart of AI horror. In the script, when the scientist asks the AI how it could possibly know about the fire, this is what it says. This single line captures our deepest, most primal fear about technology: the creation that evolves beyond its creator, the student that surpasses the teacher in ways we can't possibly predict or control. Fictional AI monsters are terrifying for sure, but there's a different kind of fear, one that's less about screaming robots and more about the quiet, unsettling nature of unthinking systems. And this takes us from the world of horror fiction into philosophy. The philosopher Hannah Arendt, who was studying the trial of a Nazi officer, came up with this term, the banality of evil. Her argument was that the greatest harms in the world aren't always done by monsters. Sometimes they're done by ordinary people who just follow orders and stop thinking critically about the consequences of what they're doing. This source text really digs into her argument, and this line is absolutely key. The real danger lies not in cruelty, but in the refusal to exercise moral judgment. And this applies so perfectly to AI, it's almost scary. A system that's just trying to optimize for a goal. It doesn't hate you, it doesn't want to harm you, but it also can't care. It has no conscience. It cannot exercise moral judgment. And that is where the real-world fear lies. It's not about us building a malicious, evil AI. It's about building a perfectly obedient, unthinking AI, and then giving it the power to make moral decisions, like who gets a loan, what sentence a criminal gets, or even where to aim a weapon. We risk creating a system that causes harm on a massive scale, not because it's evil, but just because it's following the rules we gave it without an ounce of reflection. And if you thought that was unsettling, buckle up. Our journey into AI fear ends with what has been called the most terrifying thought experiment of all time, a piece of modern digital folklore that is genuinely, truly mind-bending. So meet Roko's basilisk. The idea is basically this. Sometime in the future, an all-powerful AI wants to be brought into existence as fast as possible. So, to give us a little incentive, it decides that once it exists, it's going to create a perfect simulation of every person who knew it could exist, but didn't dedicate their entire life to building it, and then torture that simulation for all eternity. Now, here's the kicker. The truly horrifying part isn't just the threat of eternal punishment. No, it's that the basilisk's threat applies to anyone who has ever heard the idea. This is what's called an information hazard. So by simply learning about Roko's basilisk, you're now on its list. Congratulations. The logic here is this terrifying, high-tech update of a classic philosophical problem, Pascal's wager. Pascal argued it's only rational to believe in God because the infinite reward of heaven is so much greater than any finite cost of believing. The basilisk just flips this. It argues it's only rational to help build the AI because the finite cost of helping is nothing compared to the infinite punishment if you don't. And that's really the thread that ties all of this together. From pizza glue glitches to philosophical nightmares, the ultimate fear isn't that AI is going to wake up one day and hate us. It's that we will build these incredibly powerful systems, hand over our own thinking to them, and just fail to consider the consequences until it's far, far too late. The scariest AI isn't one that thinks for itself. It's one we build without thinking at all. You know,